Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. My name is Vash Sky, your host of today's ceremonies here, and, well, right next to me is going to be Lou Wasserman's Ghost. This is a special presentation of Hollywood Backlot in that it is recorded just like the good old days, Lou. Welcome back.
Live on tape, eh?
Live on
that.
tape.
Yes.
And, well, we're actually going to be talking about your history and perhaps maybe even your history on live on tape. That will be very interesting. But this is a special show because, well, Lou is going to be traveling in around 2 weeks from now from the recording of this show right here. So in order to provide you guys the amazing content that we strive to be consistent on,
And that
well,
we've been
here's a
doing
Hollywood
for over a
Backlot report.
year. Over a year we've been doing this. God,
Yes.
time flies when you're having fun. And we know you're all
Absolutely.
having fun because you keep watching. You damn fools, you can't get enough of this stuff.
Yes. Well,
It just shows
everybody
you how
loves
little
Hollywood Backlot.
competition there is on Sunday at 2:00 Eastern. Especially when it's not football season or whatever. But anyway, we're happy to do it live on tape in our basement. And
For
we're glad
you.
you like it. So we've been asking you to send in your queries, your questions on the subject which we originally invented this show to cover, but we've gone far afield and not negative about that, but which is, how does it really work in that magical tinsel town compared to the way they'd like us to believe, or the way that the PR people and the pixie dusters of Tinseltown, the tinsel dusters, I guess we'd have to call them, the chaff, the electronic countermeasures of the story, try to make you pretend to believe it works. Because I've been there in the room. I've been there. I know where all the bodies are buried, and some of that figurative and some of it maybe more than figurative.
Sure.
Anyway, so we asked you to send in questions, and by golly, you did. And you can still do that, and we'll use them in future shows. But this show, because I couldn't be here live, well, I mean, I'm always a ghost, but that's still live. We're going to catch up on a lot of those questions we've been happily accumulating for just such a purpose, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think to start us off, I think we're starting off in the best way possible because, well, the query has finally been answered. And I want you to explain how. This is from Drew right here. You talked about the Flint movies. When will you talk about the Dean Martin Matt Helm
really?
movies?
Because the genre guys have just scheduled the Dean Martin Matt Helm movies to be recorded about a week from now, or two. No, actually, it's going to be the week after I get back that we're going to record them. But we're going to deal with them and talk about the All-American spoof. And indeed, the Flint movies went a different way, and it's kind of going to be interesting to compare the two because we have done Our Man Flint on the channel. But The Silencers was the first of the 4 Matt Helm movies. And if you ever read the books, which I actually have done, they are the furthest thing from a spoof. They're pretty hard-edged, nasty. Matt Helm is not a happily tippling womanizer in those books. But hey, it's the movies, so what the heck? And this one has Stella Stevens and the lovely Dahlia Lavi, who also, of course, shows up in a different spy spoof altogether, which is the Casino Royale spoof. And Sid Charisse, of all people, as a stripper. She's too classy for that. But then those were classier times. Anyhow, we're going to be doing that very soon. So I'm glad you asked. I guess we were psychic when we picked it. When did we pick it? A couple nights ago. Anyway.
Pretty wild stuff right there. And hey, why don't you go ahead and become a member of the Pro channel right there. You can see when the genre guys actually cover Silencers as soon as it is released, and there you will know your answer as to when they'll cover it. They are in the active process of covering that. So thank you, Drew. Very much appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
And I believe he has another question right here. I didn't know if we had already covered this, so I wanted to go ahead and make sure that we do a thorough job in covering all the questions there. This is from Drew again. With the Snow White controversy, I wonder if it would have been a better idea to have made a remake of a more modernized version of Snow White, like the movie Ball of Fire with Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck. Even though I prefer it to remake A Song is Born with Danny Kaye, Virginia Mayo, and a lot of jazz and big band stars like Louis Armstrong and Tom Dorsey. What are your thoughts?
I think that's all true and a swell idea. And you may not know that I knew Danny fairly well. We used to cook together, believe it or not. Most people aren't aware that Danny Kaye was a gourmet chef, and especially a gourmet Chinese chef. Indeed, in his home, he had taken what was a patio outside his kitchen and built an entire Chinese restaurant emplacement there with 4 professional woks and a big table with a lazy Susan. And if you got invited to Danny's for Chinese, you were in for a rare treat because he did it all one dish at a time. You ate that, he made the next one. I remember my favorite thing that he did. He made a duck. I want you to imagine, if you will, a beautiful, perfect duck to begin with. And rather than, putting a crust of more typical ingredients, he used actually macadamia nut flour to give it a crispy, crusty outer skin. And he first poached the duck in flavorful broth, and that shrunk the skin down onto it. And then he did the dusting of the macadamia nuts and put it in a wok with hot oil and basting over it to crisp it. And it was divine. It was just plain divine.
Whoa.
And Danny and I actually used to go, at the farmer's market in Los Angeles, there was a meat place called Tasqualis that was famous for their very, very fine meats. And Danny, of course, was very friendly with the O'Malley family that owned the Dodgers. And so we would go by farmer's market and get some food and then go up to the VIP box at Dodger Stadium and cook for everybody. I was his kind of sous chef on some of those excursions. And he was an amazing, wonderful, wonderful guy. And of course, who doesn't like Louis Armstrong, which I have a distant connection to in the sense that a friend of mine and I almost produced a biopic about Pops called Pops. And speaking of food, most people don't know that Louis Armstrong was basically half raised by a Jewish family in New Orleans and grew up on matzo ball soup and all the delicacies of my tribe. So you wouldn't think of Louis Armstrong and gefilte fish, but by God, he knew what they were and he liked it. So there you go.
Wow.
And speaking of food and Barbara Stanwyck, see how I can just go anywhere from these things.
Please, go ahead.
Story on making in her later years, when she was the star of the Western, the Virginian, was it the Virginian? Yeah. Big Valley. What am I saying? Yeah, Big Valley. And they had a Chinese cook on the show. And there was a dialect joke that you couldn't get away with today, where she's eating the dinner and she looks at the guy. I think his name was either Wong or something like that. And she said, "This chicken is rubbery." And he says, "Oh, thank you, Missy. Thank you very much." Because he thought she said lovely in his dialect. Anyway, yeah, the Big Valley. I don't know why I didn't instantly think of that. I did think of it, and then I didn't say it. And then Gary Cooper, of course, was famous for being cheap and supposedly used to pay everything. And I mean like $1.25 for a couple of candy bars with checks. And the reason he did that was he figured people wouldn't cash them because they'd want his autograph. And he was right. About 3/4 of the checks he wrote for little bitty things never got cashed because, it's Gary Cooper's autograph. I want to save it. And they never put it in the bank. So there you go. And then Tommy Dorsey, Dorsey, by the way, sorry to fix your spelling, Drew. I don't know if you know, but Sinatra's first big gig was as the singer with Tommy Dorsey's band. And Dorsey had a quote about Sinatra, which was, "Frank Sinatra is the most fascinating man in the world, but don't put your hand in the cage."
Great line right there.
Anyway, that's where I went from that one. Egads, who knows where we're
going.
I managed to with avoiding the Snow White controversy. And it's no controversy. Yes. It sucks.
Well, it is what it is. I'll just answer from my personal recollection. I know that they were attempting to adapt the Snow White story, at least Disney was, before this Rachel Zegler version. It was going to be more Asian, and it was going to be, I thought it was like Snow White, the Seventh Samurai or something like that. What they were kind of working on, that was a treatment at that time. Got pretty far.
That didn't happen, so.
Yeah, but they decided to go in a different direction. C'est la vie, though. I hope I get big enough to write my name on checks that won't be cashed because, man, people will want my autograph.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. I don't know. Aurora Uplinks here. I didn't mean to bother you.
Let me nip this in the bud. Everybody out there, it is no bother. It is no bother.
Yes.
Okay.
No bother at all. No bother at all. But I enjoy watching Star Wars with people, even the sequels. Was curious if you guys will do the sequels sometime so we can all watch along and chat in the chat with you guys while we watch. Have you been at all interested in
doing that now? They have some magic way of partly browning it out and getting around the copyright issues. But
right.
For all things Star Wars, of course, my fellow genre guy, Lauren Connor, is the dean of all deans of Star Wars stuff. And of Indiana Jones stuff. And he's got a brand new show that we should call your attention to.
Yes.
What is it? Twice a week, I think, with Kevin Apollo, which is called Lauren and Apollo. And when I saw that, I thought, 10 Speed and Brown Shoe, what is it? Rizzoli and Eyes. There's so many great team up shows like that. And I watched the first one actually, not live, but last night. And he found somehow he had a script for a potential indie movie that would have been what if they'd done that one instead of the Crystal Skull. And about the only thing in common it had was the refrigerator from the atomic blast. But
yes,
it was fascinating. He went through the whole
favorite
story. And anyway, and lots of fun. And Pro was there, and Culture was there. And anyway, so if Lauren wants to do it, we'll do it. He's the Star Wars genius of all things. And Nolan was there too with trivia questions. So about Star Wars video games and characters and what was the weapon called and all kinds of crazy stuff. So those are obviously there. It's a live show like we normally are, but it's then up there to be watched over and over again on the Pro channel. And yes. I can recommend that to you, Aurora Uplinks. And Aurora Uplinks, for those who don't know that, Nick, is the person who's always sending wonderful, well, what if they made a movie and very detailed, complex plots for potential films. And I'm always telling him, would you, for goodness sakes, just sit down and write one? They're good ideas, but just saying, well, what if you've basically, A, put it out there for the world and they'll steal it if it's good, and B, foreclosed on your own creativity to a certain degree. Go ahead and write the script, even if you don't think it's great.
Right.
As they say in the song, Hooray for Hollywood, go on and try your luck. You could be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood. So go ahead and write them, Aurora Uplinks, please. Don't just share the ideas.
And we know that infamously, Hollywood executives are maybe approached casually all the time about, hey, got a story for this, story for that. And a lot of people say, no,
you listen to you because they're scared to death you'll sue them later if they do something similar.
Yep.
Which is why you need an agent and registering it with the Writers Guild and all the rest of that.
But it all starts with ideas. All starts with a story.
Not a mouse?
Right, formally.
I thought it all started with a mouse. I was misinformed.
Well, a mouse or a bee or something like that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's not go there. It all starts with a nose that looks real, or a chest that doesn't look tuberculosis, whatever the word is.
A Walt Disney Audio-Animatronics joke for everybody there watching. But, let me go ahead and explain this out really, really quickly. Would you be up for a watch-along if it was Star Wars or something else?
I'd be up for anything. Obviously, I'm here with you. That proves I have no taste whatsoever. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for Uplinks for that.
But in a way, I kind of like the format of the Genre Guys better because, we can kind of cut to the chase when every great movie has a few moments in it that are hit the fast forward button. And that's partially true of older films, and I don't mean very much older, because the audience is constantly being educated in pacing. If you look at old classics from the silent days and right thereafter, they just plod. And the reason they plod is that they felt they had to give you the geography of the room in a big wide master shot so you'd know this person's over here and this one's over there. And that did not go well when sound came in because the microphones weren't very good and they had to get them right under people. And if you watch closely, a lot of those early sound movies, It's two people sitting at a table with a big bouquet of flowers. What's that doing there? It's hiding the microphone because they had to get in close. Or because the camera couldn't move because it was in a big wooden box with padding so that the noise of the motor of the camera didn't get on the soundtrack. So there you go. Anyway, we've talked about all that before.
Oh, no. Well, we have a lot of new people watching the shows and the programs and so forth. So
the technology over the years obviously has improved. Whether it's improved the storytelling is yes and no. Yes,
indeed.
and no.
As we talk about all the time on our various channels. Thank you so much, Over Uplinks, for that one. Jan Monroe comes in here. Hi! Which comics acting career was just them being themselves and bits from their nightclub / stand routines? What is the worst movie that they've made you review? I know that there are movies we just like because we just don't like them, but are demonstrably, I believe, bad movies. So,
well, Jan,
questions right
there's
here.
A couple different questions there. Yeah, first of all, on the one hand, I think all of the great comics, there was a core personality that was them. It wasn't necessarily them to their loved ones or their close friends. But when you talk about their nightclubs and stand-up routines, you have to remember that most of these people that came out of the theater, by which I mean basically vaudeville and the like, they practiced their movie stuff in front of live audiences to refine it. The Marx Brothers famously would go on the road and do all the shticks they were going to do. The Three Stooges also in their next movie in front of a live audience and say, well, wait a minute, we want to change these two words because it comes off better, and lots of little fine-tuning details. The worst movie they've made me review. I know people will be shocked when I say it wasn't the John Travolta Scientology epic. What the heck was it called? I've blocked the experience from my memory. But it wasn't as awful as I thought it would be. There have been a couple of real stinkers, but we're honest about it, and nobody makes us review it. I mean, we defer to each other as far as suggestions are concerned. I've made, we talked about just recently the genre guys for our duet, because we're recording 2 at a time now and taking a week off in between because everybody has other stuff to do also. We did a movie called Seconds at my suggestion. And Seconds is a pretty damn scary movie. And it's not your typical modern day, somebody jumps out and knifes somebody kind of horror movie, but a more psychological horror film with Rock Hudson of all people, and James Wong Howe's black and white cinematography. And anyway, we all watched them. Even though I'd seen the ones I recommend and Lauren his and Tommy his, we all watch them again so we can get new ideas and new inspiration. And when I get a call, or not a call, but a message in our back channel communications megalopolis that you never see from Lauren, and all it says is, this Seconds movie is quite disturbing. Ooh, I thought, this will be a fun one. And what's interesting is just before we started recording, he said, I got to tell you, I hate this movie. I admire its technical brilliance, but I just hated what it did to me. And by the end, he was hating it in a kind of admiring, loving sort of a way. And so I always like when that happens. I always like when people, all of us, broaden our perspectives. I got to see this, I'd never heard of this documentary about this guy, Drew, who did all the great movie posters. Fascinating. And Lauren brought that one to the table. And so you never know is the answer. And there have been a few stickers, but what was the one we did recently that I thought was so terrible? Oh, the disco psycho MTV gay Batman movie, Batman Forever.
Forever.
Oh, was it forever? and what was funny was that the guys said, I remember going to see this and liking it then. What the hell was wrong with me? Because it's terrible. It's so bad. And
I have an excuse
for taking a shot at it, but oh God.
My excuse is that I was a kid when that came out.
Well, that's everybody's. Like I say, it was made for the MTV generation, so to speak.
And Forever was released in 95. I was 5 years old, so that's my excuse for liking that at that time.
A babe in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
A babe in the woods. Anyway, so that was That was the most recent stinker that we did, is the answer to
Yeah.
the question. And it really is a stinker. Oh,
It's not great. Battlefield Earth, I believe, is what you were
yeah, that was
referring
the
to
other.
right there.
Yeah. It wasn't as
And
terrible as I thought it was going to be. It was pretty bad, but
yeah, it's interesting to go back to this question for just one second. The on the comics and how different they were, how similar they were, and so forth. I've been doing some deep dive into the '90s comic movies or comedies that came out around that time, like Tommy Boy and stuff like Dumb and Dumber and all of that. I was taken aback by how different actually Chris Farley was from his acting persona right there, and how much he actually wanted to get into drama during the kind of the end of his career.
Well,
unfortunately, we never got to see
there is a great movie on that subject, Sullivan's Travels by Preston Sturges, with the aforementioned Barbara Stanwyck and Joel McCrea, is about a comedy director who feels that his entire career has been kind of frivolous and wants to make a serious movie, and learns otherwise through a whole chain of events. So there's a movie I'll recommend to everybody. We should do that one too. Yeah, it's Sullivan's Travels. Go watch that if you want an answer on that. And interesting. Okay, let me go a little further. He decides he's going to go out and see the real America, and dress like a bum and hang with the poor people and see what they're like. And of course, they're following along behind him in what they call a land yacht, which is this big, huge luxury RV. Well, he gets arrested and he gets put on a chain gang in the Deep South for real. And he thinks, well, and then nobody can find him. And they take all these guys that are the most misbegotten people on the planet for their 1 a week treat, which is they go to this 1-room church and they roll down a screen. And what do they get to watch? Mickey Mouse. And they laugh. And he suddenly realizes the power of laughter and how it's so important to us all. And that maybe what he's been doing all these years hasn't been so stupid and pointless and less than artistic after all. It's a great picture. Great picture.
That's fantastic. That's really good. And poignant commentary, especially for us today without as many comedies as we had before, especially in cinemas. So that's really cool stuff there.
But
thank you so much, Lou, for that.
We also did a great movie I highly recommend to you that the guys had never heard of and never seen, because I guess I went to a lot of obscure movies. But it's called The Silent Partner. And Elliot Gould was made in Canada. Elliot Gould and Susanna York. Thanks, Miss Sweeney, but Susanna York for me. Thank you very much. Anyway, Elliot Gould is a bank teller at a bank in a big mall in Toronto. And this guy shows up in a Santa Claus suit, because it's the Christmas season, and starts to write a "give me all your money" note on one of the deposit slips, but then for whatever reason leaves in the middle, and Elliot finds it. And therefore he knows that this guy will be back to rob the bank. So he takes a bunch of the money and puts it in his lunchbox. And when the guy robs the bank, he takes the money, and they announce that the bank was robbed for X $1,000. But the bank robber, played by Christopher Plummer, knows it wasn't anywhere near that much. And he figures out that this guy must have kept the rest of it. And he calls him up and he says, we're now silent partners, you and me, and you're going to give me that money or else. And he's very bad and very nasty. Well, one of the people playing one of the minor characters, who's another bank worker, is John Candy, long before he was famous for big comedy or even for the Second City stuff or whatever it was, I forget, that he got into it with. So you see a lot of people coming up playing parts you wouldn't even think they'd be in. And so the whole line between comedy and drama is blurred, to say the least. So, but that's a fantastic movie. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, is that a good one. Well, that'll be coming on. All these things will be coming on this channel soon, he said wistfully. I've been ribbing Vash, because Vash takes them and enhances them and puts more pictures in and does all kinds of marvelous things to make them even better. Because as you know, or maybe you don't, the Genre Guys premieres as a member perk for members of the Pro channel. And then a couple of months later, they show up here for everyone, for the masses, because we are rivers to our people, as Tony Quinn would have said, or did say.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
But there's a long answer to a couple of questions. I hope they satisfied.
I think they do. This next one from Jeremy here. Hey, Lou! One of the things I miss about being in bands and doing shows was just hanging out before or after. We'd brainstorm or just shoot the breeze. The actual shows were fun, but there were people I just look forward to saying hi to, without being specific, obviously. Are the shows or movies where... Are there shows and movies where that was the case? I guess for you, Lou.
Oh, sure.
You would love
Absolutely.
getting together for those moments over a cup of coffee. Probably not a great question,
And
but
especially when you're doing TV, it's analogous to what you said about bands in the sense that it's not just one show and done like it is with a feature, even if it takes 3 or 4 months to do a feature. If you're on a hit, and I've been happily associated with a couple of long-running hits, it's years that you're family. You all know sooner or later it's going to end and you'll go your separate ways. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we would hang out. Of course, that makes it interesting with, as on TV, guest stars, in the sense that they are visitors for a week to that family. And in fact, I was talking about this with my wonderful wife just the other day, about a very famous comedic actress who's, if I named her, you would all know her. I'm not going to. And she was a guest star on one of these shows. And at the end of the show, as you might know if you've ever been to a filming or taping of a sitcom, you know, we do it just like a theater show in the sense that we do curtain calls and people come out and get their applause. And I was standing there as she came off stage from her curtain call, you know, smiling, and everybody loved her. And she was very well known and beloved by audiences. And as she walked off stage, off view of the audience, her face dropped. The smile faded. And there was this little moment where, if I was reading it right, she might have been thinking, was that the last time? In other words, when you're a guest star, you never know if that's going to be the last time somebody calls or the last part somebody gives you. It's tough emotionally being an actor because you have to say, well, they're not. Well, my mother, who I've mentioned was in radio in the golden olden days, later in her life decided to go out and do commercials. And she would get called for an audition, and she'd call her son, the director, and say, this is what they said. What do you think they're looking for? And I had to explain to her, they don't know. They think they know, but they don't know until they see it. So to try and anticipate what they're going to, and then she would get the part. And 2 months later, when they shot it, they had totally changed the entire story of the commercial, but they still had a part for a woman of her age. So she was still there. But instead of playing the school teacher, she was playing a customer in a coffee store or whatever it happened to be. And so it is a very tenuous existence when everybody is freelance. And even the crew people, you know, they don't know what's going to happen from day to day, but certainly hanging out with everybody. I remember one time on one of the long runs that I was involved with, and we had a new dolly grip. And he was a very old-timer, experienced, had made a million movies and shows, dolly grip, but he had never done multi-camera sitcom before. And this was Warner Brothers, and he walks onto the stage at about 9:00 for the call, and he looks at me and he says, wait a minute, I'm on a nice warm sound stage with beautiful craft service, having a bagel with some cream cheese and a cup of fresh coffee, and I'm not up to my butt in cold water at Lake Piru at 2 a.m. Where's this been all my life? It was a different world, you know? And so for the crew, because it was so predictable, yeah, it was even more like family because everybody, you know, we worked together, we ate together. I was a hero on one thing. We were doing a pilot, and the audience had long gone home. This was like almost 3 a.m. And we'd started with the audience at like 6:30 p.m. And we're shooting and shooting and shooting because nobody wants to let it go. And you've got 12 writers and producers and the cast. And the scene was that somebody was supposed to say, hey, I'm going to, and it was an imitation of 7-Eleven. They didn't use the real name. But the thing was, do you want me to get you a smoothie or a Slurpee or something like that? And they couldn't decide which word was funnier. They were willing to take the copyright, whatever. Well, should I say Slurpee or smoothie? And suddenly all 13 brilliant writer, producer types are conversing, and the crew is standing around, and we like overtime as much as the next guy, you know? But at this point, it was like, And I said, "Excuse me, guys." And they all looked at me, and I said, and I held up my keys, and I jingled my keys, and I said, "Let's shoot both and go home. And you can decide what's funnier in the editing room next week." The entire crew gave me a standing ovation, because it was like, at this point, let's just get our butts out of here and back to our families and what we laughingly call our lives. And indeed, there were cases. The guilds were arguing for limits, not just, hey, you pay me extra because it's overtime, but actual hard limits on how late you could go, because there were people killed in car crashes because they fell asleep at the wheel trying to get home from a location.
Right.
So anyway, it looks like a fun, lighthearted life, but it's hard work and it's long hours. And when you do all that and you suffer those relatively benign privations together, yeah, you become the gang at Cheers, at least, if not a family. You become the people who, and you don't really know anybody because you don't, except, well, like things like rap parties, they bring their wives or husbands or whoever, but you get to know each other and you get to know who they are when the chips are down and the chips are up. And yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, the recent IATSE contract actually had dealt with the overtime issue where people were unfortunately expiring after productions and so forth from having stayed too late, and now you have accommodations that get to make and so forth, which I thought was very good. There was
now there are provisions where they have to buy you a hotel room near the location, or
right.
If they're going to drive you back, instead of having you drive, they have to arrange to get your car back, and little things like that make a big difference.
You talk about Paramount, especially being kind of a family.
Every studio had its own personality. Yeah. Paramount, for good or ill, was more, let's promote people from within than the other studios when I was involved with them. More than Fox, more than Universal, more than Warner Brothers. So, if you got in with the in crowd there, you were going to have work and maybe get promoted up, and maybe at other places it wouldn't happen. So that was just a quirk of the style there. That's all. At that period of time, whether that was true for time immemorial, I have no idea.
Sure. Let's see here. We have another question from George here. Dear Lou, are you familiar with Antonio Carlotta YouTube channel? She says her family started Universal Studios. I'll go ahead and have you take that first one. Lou.
Never heard of her.
There you go. The Dustin Hoffman incident from Midnight Cowboy of, quote, "I'm a walk-in here." Is that a true story that a cab inadvertently drove into a live film shoot?
Don't know, but I'm walking here is a pretty common New Yorkism, so who knows?
There you go. And I worked for a movie studio in the 1990s. Our film rental teams terms to theaters were 90-10 for the first 2 weeks, 80-20 for the next 2 weeks, and 70-30 for the following 2 weeks, and 60-40 for the next 2 weeks, and then a flat $200 rental fee per week. Were these normal terms for all studios?
And that's why I keep telling people that when these movies only last a week or two, all bets are off, because they aren't there long enough to work out those things. When everybody says, well, it's basically a 50-50 split. Well, basically it is, but not all at the same time. I don't know that they ever got to that flat 200 per week, but you have to understand something about those numbers. Those numbers kick in after what is known as the house nut. What does that mean? It means the cost of all the dweebs who take your tickets. It means the Coke, the popcorn, all of that is paid for up front, which means basically that highly overpriced popcorn and a Coke is 100% profit. Less general labor of delivery and stocking shelves and that sort of thing. So, there is that. But that's why these movies that come and go in a week or two or three, movie theater doesn't get much of that. So
Wing-to-wing practices, they're important. But thank you so much, George, for your amazing questions. Let's see here. Paul asks, LW Ghost likes to talk about history. I haven't heard you mention that Netflix building a studio complex in New Jersey. This video has drawings and explains New Jersey tax credits, etc. Be nice to hear Lou's comments. I'm going to forward this to him instead of blindsiding him on the stream.
Which is, of course, exactly what you did. So I'm not
Exactly. That's of course what I did right there. This video goes into a lot of detail. Netflix got a disused land at a bargain price. Smart move.
Well, maybe a smart move. And the reason I say that is over the past, maybe 20 years, people have been building sound stages left, right, and center. Now, as we've covered many times here and on the other show, Universal's talking about tearing a bunch of them down and putting in theme park instead, because there isn't the same level of demand for sound stages, and certainly not in Hollywood. And I would guess even with the tax breaks in New Jersey and New York, that's the same thing, which is that the cost of living is so high, and the cost of taxes are so high, and the cost and time of transportation. For those who don't know, the very first Western ever made, a movie called The Great Train Robbery, a silent film, was filmed in the western wilds of New Jersey. So, which is why Samuel Goldwyn famously said, most of you who know anything about LA know that there's a huge park in the middle of it called Griffith Park, named after a Colonel Griffith who actually donated the land. And Sam Goldwyn said, a rock is a rock, a tree is a tree, shoot it in Griffith Park, rather than going on distant location. Within Griffith Park, by the way, is not only the famous LA observatory that you've seen in, sci-fi movies, and that tunnel. Remember at the end of every episode of the original Mission Impossible, they would drive off through a tunnel and the camera would kind of flip upside down? That's in Griffith Park. But also in Griffith Park is the Batcave. Bronson Canyon is technically in part of Griffith Park, and a thing called Ferndale that's all, a dell full of ferns that looks kind of jungly, that's been used in a zillion movies. So we do have a diversity of shooting environments close to things in LA. And I don't know whether net soundstage space in New Jersey will be a good investment or a bad investment. Obviously, if they got it at the right price, it was a good deal then. But, times change and demand changes. So.
They do. And with any investment, it's, especially with one New Jersey, it's all the things you talk about, Lou, in order to accommodate filming that location. The tax credits have to be, half. They have to be so much so that it makes it, economically viable, right? And it cuts into that. And to the degree that
viable for the people taking advantage of those breaks, whether it's viable for the state and for its taxpayers. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Every economic study of all these tax breaks, and not just for movies, but for stadiums and convention centers and things like that, every single one of them says that you're giving up more in tax revenue than you're ever making in revenue from people getting jobs. They don't pan out economically. But they're great politically, because, look, I'm bringing all these new jobs to the area. Aren't I a wonderful guy? Reelect me. Well, swell.
I suppose what I'm saying is that they had to accommodate for all the additional fees, right, in order to film in New Jersey. So if at the end of production is higher than maybe Georgia or Atlanta or even Hollywood, it's like, okay, well, was that a great bargain price, so to speak? So very interesting stuff.
Now, it's convenient because their corporate offices are in Manhattan, but how long will that last if this guy who thinks worldwide jihad is swell and who wants to basically turn New York City into the People's Republic? Good luck. Good luck.
Indeed. This is from Shauna here. I'm going to break this up into two parts right here because there's a great story that I want to go ahead and include for this. But first, the question from Shauna. I am a big fan of Vincent Price, despite being a scaredy cat and not liking the whole lot of horror films. Mr. Price still holds a special place in my heart. Recently, I came across a teaser trailer for a documentary about his career. The trailer's on YouTube. It's by Wicked Vision Distribution. I'm curious to know if Lou has ever met Mr. Price. And I remember you mentioning Cooking with Danny Kaye, and that's what's got me thinking about Vincent.
I dined and drank wine with Vincent Price. The Robert Mondavi Winery up in Napa had an offshoot. Long before they put the stuff into Disney California Adventure, they had a thing called the Robert Mondavi Wine and Food Center in Costa Mesa, which is probably half an hour from Disneyland if traffic is bad. And it was a whole dining and wine tasting facility. And one time they did a program that they called Poe, Pinot, and Price. And it was Halloween. It was all lit by candles and jack-o'-lanterns. And it was a marvelous dinner matched with all of their marvelous Pinot Noirs with the real, the live, the original Vincent Price there reading passages from Edgar Allan Poe. And oh, what a night it was. What a wonderful, wonderful time. And he was a true gentleman. And he was, yes, a very expert gourmet chef and knowledgeable about wine and about art also. He was just as nice as you hope he was. And, he had fun playing all those crazy parts. But he did a lot of things long before he became famous for horror. But yeah, I have met him at that instance, and I liked him. What can I say? So, what's the next one?
One of the last things that Vincent did before, unfortunately, leaving us far too soon was he did the laugh for the Phantom in Phantom Manor at Disneyland Paris, but he also did the Ghost Host spiel.
Yes, that's right. In the Wild West version of the Haunted Mansion. Right.
And he did, I think, in English and in French. And unfortunately, the Ghost Host audio portion, which follows you in your Dune buggy, was unfortunately never included in that version of the attraction. But those were recorded, and I've always wanted them to release those in some way. I'm not sure they ever can, but they were cut because I guess Vincent Price, even though he did know French and speak it fluently, he still had a little bit of an accent, so they didn't want to maybe include it. And also too, for the various languages that actually visit Disneyland Paris, the guests that is. It might be better not to go so linguistic with your shows there. So,
but it's okay to put a flume ride in a place that snows. But that's a whole other story. About
they used to be far more thoughtful.
I might also mention about Vincent Price.
Please,
if you'd like to see what I think are two of his very best movies, and really there's a third that's almost a sequel, Dr. Phibes, Phibes, and the sequel. Dr. Phibes Writhes Again. Golly, they're fun. And they were directed and created by a guy who used to direct the old original Avengers, not the Marvel Avengers, but the Steed and Peele Avengers, which you may remember in its prime always began with a kind of a pre-title sequence involving some strange death or disaster with weird circumstances, which is why Steed and Peele were called in to investigate. Well, the whole plot of Dr. Phibes is that there were 12 doctors who failed to save his wife's life when she was in an automobile accident, led by Joseph Cotten, by the way. And so he decides he's going to kill them, each one with a different one of the plagues that Moses put on Pharaoh. Well, God put on Pharaoh. So, the boils and the frogs and anyway, they're pretty wonderful. The one that's beasts, somehow he propels a full-size head of a unicorn made out of like brass or silver from across the street. So when the guy opens the door to his house, it goes all the way and impales him and pins him to this wall behind him. So later when the police show up, they're removing the body. And what you see is this, you're on the other side of the wall and you see the unicorn horn spinning slowly and the feet going by around the edges of the wall as they unscrew him from the wall. It's that kind of, it's just funny stuff like that. And it's stylish as heck, and it's all Art Deco. And then the second one, Dr. Phibes Rides Again, takes place in Egypt. And you have to remember that the discovery of King Tut's tomb brought a whole Egyptian style to the Art Deco era because it was all the rage. And anyway, they're great movies. There's a third one called Theater of Death that isn't Phibes, but it's close, same style. And his wife, Coral, is in that one. And it's about, theatrical revenge murders. But so even if you don't like technically, scary horror movies, these are fun, scary horror movies and well worth your time. We have to do those on the Genre Guys sometime too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Horror is definitely a genre that must be included. I'm going to go ahead and include this this last piece right here. It's a little bit long, but worth including nonetheless. Also wanted to mention that a story my dad told me while serving in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. He was sent to a base in California, and they were going to have an officers' party. It was to be held in a hangar for a blimp. That hangar is so large that it can create its own atmosphere. It will create a mist and rain, so they decided to theme it to a rainforest. So someone called up Disneyland and asked Mr. Disney, I'm guessing that's Walt, if they could borrow some synthetic plants for the officers' party. My dad and his buddy were sent to pick up the synthetic plants from Disneyland. Both my dad and his buddy were having coffee, waiting, and Mr. Disney came over and sat down and had coffee with them. My dad said that he was very kind. Doesn't remember the conversation fully, and as it was a long time ago, but he did say what I've heard people often say about Mr. Disney and his personality. If you want to know what he's like, all you have to do is look at his brother Roy. Dad passed away in June 2011.
Well, that blimp base, that building is still there. You see it from the freeway when you drive down south of Disneyland. And it's been used in movies, including, I think, one of the Indiana Jones movies. They used it as the blimp base.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's huge. It's just huge. And it's part of the Marine Corps base there. Yeah, it's
great stuff.
Quite a building.
Quite a building and quite a story, Shauna. So thank you so much for sharing those experiences. I thought that was really, really cool. So thank you. And then last, but certainly not least, from Karen Owen. Here's a question that might be of interest for Hollywood Backlot. Last weekend, I got to meet a lady who is a descendant of one of the founding families of my town. She did a concert and talked about her family history. Just found out that her brother is longtime entertainment journalist James Ulmer, who created the Ulmer scale of ranking celebrities into A, B, C, or D list. Where did Lew Wasserman's ghost rank on that Ulmer scale?
I doubt that he did, because he wasn't a performer. As I remember it, that was kind of an early version of the same kind of thing as what we call the TVQ score for actors and actresses. But, Lew was not trying to be famous. In fact, his most famous dictum is, stay out of the spotlight, it'll fade your suit.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And there's some additional information there, Lew, concerning Dick Van Dyke. And I know you guys just covered Mary Poppins on the Genre Guys as well, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, that is super, super cool.
And by the way, Karen Owen is a vast treasure trove of good information. In fact, I mentioned, or maybe it was prior recording, but show live, but I just watched the first episode of the Lorne and Apollo show, and they had Karen doing a whole series of trivia questions for them that were awfully good. So,
wow.
Yeah, she's a great resource and a great member of our chat community, and we appreciate you, Karen. Thank you very much for the question.
Karen is phenomenal, and I just realized that I forgot to actually hide her email. So if you see a series of images on the screen, that is probably why. But thank you so much.
Did we do the juke yet for this?
What was that?
Did we do the jukebox yet? I'm trying to remember.
No, we have not done the jukebox. Let's go ahead and get that.
Yes, we thought we'd give you a sing-along. It's a huge concert, I think, at the Albert Hall with several hundred, if not 1,000 people, all with Eric Idle. And Michael Palin is in it, and they're singing along on "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" from Monty Python, and the Roman one, and then we also added a clip to the description of Eric Idle explaining where the song came from and how it came about. So if you'd like to sing along with "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," you can do it without even being crucified. Isn't that nice?
Thank you so much.
All of those people in that wonderful building that see so much great music. So we thought that would be appropriate or inappropriate or something. And the one that's also in the link is that one that you can see at the bottom there. Eric Idle talks about his inspiration behind the song. There it is. So we leave you those to enjoy at your leisure. And anybody out there who watches those, get anybody who you might be embarrassed to hear you out of the house first, so you can indeed sing along, because they provide you with the everything short of the bouncing ball, to sing along.
Sure. Oh wow, that's some great stuff there, Lou. You always have such amazing selections for every single week's jukebox right there. Hopefully everybody gets a kick out of a little bit of Monty Python, which we all need from time to time right there. Well, that just about concludes this episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. I do appreciate you sticking around for a recorded version of this show. If you want to email your own questions, well, it's T3PO online. Sorry, T3P online at yahoo.com right there.
And next time,
questions here.
With the grace of Bill O'Reilly, we'll do it live.
We'll do it live. I believe, I actually have it right here.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. Yeah. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Right. Thing sucks.
Oh, man. That's there you go. There's a little Bill O'Reilly for you. Good stuff there. We will do it live for sure, but hey, we want to go ahead and provide you content, whether it's live or recorded. Thank you so much for sticking around.
And as I mentioned, it turns out we've been doing this for now over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Your fortitude in sticking with us and enjoying it and sending us lovely feedback is appreciated, believe me. Truly.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for providing that feedback via, whether it's the email or in the comments, the chat, everything like that. Very much appreciate everything there. And please, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button before you exit this video right here. We will return live. I can assure you next week at the same bat time, same bat channel. It's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday there, and on 3 p.m. Eastern here on this channel on Tuesdays. Well, we have T3PO Live, so definitely check us out there. Thank you so much. We will see you all here, well, I guess, next week live and in studio, kind of. I don't know if that works, but thank you so much, guys. We'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.